What is the ancestral diet? In this video, I'm going to be going over the diet that I made that is based on what our ancestors eat. So let's get started. This is the Ancestral Diet Full Guide. My ancestral diet is a diet suited for humans based on our evolution and adapted for the modern day. So it isn't exactly what our hunter-gatherer ancestors ate, but it's a version of that adapted to our modern day because now we have to worry about things like EMFs, pollutants, so it's really important to have an adapted diet. We gotta get started with our roots. What exactly did our hunter-gatherer ancestors eat? So this varied by group and time period. Not all of our hunter-gatherer ancestors were eating the same, and if you look at groups from 100,000 years ago versus 50 versus 15, they all had different diets as time evolved. Most of them, though, ate 65% to 90% animal products, so they were largely animal-based. There were some more herbivorous groups that ate 50 to 65% of vegetables, but the lowest observed amount of plant products eaten is 50%, so they were all extremely animal-based for the most part. Most of them ate a mixed diet of seafood and land animals, but some of them only ate one or the other. There are tribes that only ate land animals, and there are tribes that only ate sea animals. They also ate fermented meats. It sounds kind of gross, but back in the day, they didn't have fridges, so they, just let the meat sit out. And this actually grew beneficial bacteria, which I will talk about later. And they also ate things like fruit and honey seasonally. So they weren't eating fruit and honey every single day of the year unless they lived in tropical zones. It was only when the environment gave it. And for other plant foods, they were eating, for the most part, starches, nuts, and some cereals. They were mainly focusing on starches and they ate very little greens. I want to preface that this ancestral diet isn't eating exactly like our ancestors. You do not have to eat exactly how they ate. This diet is only based on what they eat and based on our evolution. So some foods they didn't eat that are excellent additions to our diet, for example, raw milk, an excellent food, a superfood, a complete food. Our ancestors didn't have raw milk. So, and another one is avocado. Avocado is cultivated by humans. Our ancestors did not have avocado in nature. So this is another great food that our ancestors didn't have, but you could eat. And I want to comment on the agricultural ancestors and how our ancestors, some of them were eating, nuts and cereals, grains and stuff like that. I want to preface that you probably should not be eating these foods because our ancestors could handle the plant toxins better due to their perfect environments. So think about it. They were in nature. They had no pollution. They had sun all the time, so they could handle those plant toxins better. All right, so getting to the meat of the diet, literally the main part, the animal foods. The minimum animal foods that you should eat is 70%. So that's most of your diet should be animal foods. And the percentage shifts during winter because this diet, it shifts during the seasons like how our ancestors did. The animal foods are where you'll get all of the essential nutrition for the diet. You get things like B12, zinc, K2, vitamin A, B vitamins, vitamin E, selenium, carnosine, creatine, and omega-3 is just so much nutrition. As you can see, these are all great sources. Egg yolks, salmon, meat, pork, those are all great options. I want to talk about the sea to land meat ratio. So how much fish versus land animals should you eat? You need to be eating at least 30% seafood or vice versa. So let's say you have a diet that's based on seafood for whatever reason, you should have at least 30% land animals. Or if you're like me and have a diet based on land animals, you should eat at least 30% seafood. So you want to be getting a big chunk of your animal calories from one or the other. Now, I'm going to be talking about muscle meat, land animals versus fish. First, I'm going to be going on to land animals. So land animals are the most nutrient dense, and you should focus on ruminants. Ruminants are animals with a four-chamber stomach. There are things like cow, goats, lamb, etc. These are ruminants. And the reason you want to focus on ruminants and not animals like chicken and pork is because since ruminants have a big stomach, they can break food down further. So they have lower linoleic acid and lower toxins. So you really want to be focusing on these animals. Cow particularly is what I focus on, but I do like to have some sheep and some goat from time to time, and bison is also delicious. So what quality do you want for these? You want grass-fed or pasture-raised. This is going to have more nutrients, more carotenoids, and this is going to be great. So this is the natural diet of the ruminant. Ideally, you want to be getting these from a local farm and not from the supermarket, but at least for me, that's not really possible because of the cost. So supermarket grass-fed and pasture-raised is fine, but if you can get from a local farm, this is the best quality. And you should also cycle non-ruminants once a week because sometimes, you get tired of constantly eating red meat, me. You want to have something to refresh your palate. So once a week, I like to have chicken. It refreshes my palate. It's delicious. But your base should be these ruminant animals. Now, I'm going to be talking about sea animals. You got to get those omega-3s. Omega-3s are essential for so many things like cardiovascular health, brain health, and so much more. So omega-3s have to be a big part of the diet. So for low mercury fish like salmon, trout, and sardines, you can eat it as much as you want. And then for high mercury fish, you can eat it a maximum of 4 times a week. So things like swordfish and king mackerel, you do not want to be eating these every single day because they have a lot of mercury and heavy metals. But tuna, you can do more. You can do like 6 times a week tuna because the ratio to selenium and mercury is kind of even. And if you didn't know, selenium binds to mercury, so it neutralizes all of that mercury. I would recommend focusing on these low mercury fish, but you can also do tuna, swordfish, king mackerel. I eat fish around like 3 times a week. It's absolutely delicious, and I highly recommend that you incorporate some fish into your diet. So for the quality of the fish, this is very important. You want to do only wild caught and no farm raised. Farm raised fish are absolutely disgusting. They have so many toxins. You want to stay away from them at all costs. Only do wild caught. And bonus points if you catch the fish yourself. I love fishing. I love catching fish. It's super ancestral and primal to do so. And then we also got seafood. This is my favorite. Oysters are king. Oysters have zinc, selenium, and so many rare minerals. I get like 24 oysters a week, eat them throughout the week. These things are nutrient-dense bombs. They're the most nutrient-dense seafood, so I highly recommend you get oysters. Mussels, clams, squid, octopus, and things of that nature are great too. So if you don't have access to oysters, you can also do these. For the quality, farm raised is fine because the farms aren't as dirty. They don't have as many toxins as, let's say, farm raised fish. So I get farmed oysters. That's not a problem. Organs. 99% of the time you want ruminant only organs. This is because of what we talked about, because ruminants filter out more toxins and organs hold the most toxicity. You only need 2 organs on this diet: liver and bone marrow. So I'm going to be going over the benefits of liver. Liver should be your main vitamin A source. It's an extremely rich source of vitamin A, the best out there, and liver is the most nutrient-dense food on earth. It's packed with nutrients, scarce in muscle meats, and you only need 6 to 8 ounces of liver per week. More than that can become harmful because of copper toxicity. This is a little bit of a controversial topic, but to be honest, you don't really need more than 6 to 8 ounces per week. Alright, now for bone marrow. This is a superfood, alright? Bone marrow has glycine and collagen, which is extremely important to balance out with muscle meat, and it also has stem cells. You should have bone marrow or bone broth a few times a week to get that collagen going. It's extremely beneficial. And then you also have the optional organs like brain, heart, and kidney. You do not need to be eating these as long as you eat these 2 organs, but they are extremely beneficial. So if you have access to them, go for it. The quality of the organs is more important than muscle meats because the organs hold more toxicity. So you really want to be getting organs from a local farm. In my experience, supermarket organs, even the grass-fed ones, aren't that good. I do get bone marrow from the supermarket. I found that to be fine. But liver from the supermarket, I find that to be absolutely horrible. The taste is super bad. I usually get my liver from a local farm. So if anything for liver, you want to be focusing on that local farm-like quality. Alright, now we have dairy. Raw dairy is king. Easier digestion, greater nutrition, and just so many benefits. Pasteurized is not that good, guys. You can still drink pasteurized if you can tolerate it, but I would highly recommend raw dairy. Milk. Milk has optimal hydration. It's complete water, so it's going to be way more hydrating than water. And you want to be drinking at least 1 cup of milk a day for that calcium, for that hydration. And in the morning is the best because after you wake up, you're dehydrated, so getting that milk really helps you. And during puberty is really where you want to be focusing on milk. I recommend drinking 0.7 liters plus a day. This is going to help you grow a lot, like grow super tall. So if you're during puberty, drink a lot of raw milk. Now, cheese. Cheese is an amazing snack. I eat it throughout the day. You should balance it with other dairies. So if you drink a shit ton of milk, you don't really need cheese, and vice versa. You don't want to fill up your stomach with too much dairy and then neglect the other animal products. Great cheeses are made from raw milk. So you have things like Parmigiano Reggiano, Gruyere cheese. These are all cheeses made from raw milk. These are high quality cheeses. You can get pasteurized cheese, but again, raw is just going to be so much better. So why not get raw? You can also do fermented dairy products like yogurt and kefir, and just like the cheese, you should balance with other other dairies. And now dairy fat like butter, that's going to be the best fat. It's going to have hella nutrients. I think that butter is even better than tallow because it has more nutrition. And you should use butter for adding to meals and low heat cooking, and ghee for high heat cooking because butter, it burns pretty easily. So for that high heat cooking, I would recommend ghee. For the dairy quality, you want to be focusing on A2 casein. This is a casein that a lot of people digest much better. A1 casein, it has some problems with people, so you want to get A2 milk. If you can tolerate A1 milk, fine, but A2 will always be better. So I recommend like Jersey cows, stuff like that. Milk from the sheep, the goats, and other animals besides cows, those are all A2. So if you can get some A2 cow milk, I recommend, either goat milk or sheep milk. For the milk, you want to be getting grass-fed, pasture-raised. The milk quality really matters. You don't want to be getting any of that soy, antibiotic crap milk, cows fed with grains, dirty ass milk. You want to be getting the highest quality. And of course, raw dairy, I emphasize this a lot. But the raw butter doesn't make much of a difference in my opinion. If you want to focus on raw, obviously raw butter is going to be better than cooked butter. But if you do want to focus on raw milk and raw cheese. Alright, a lot of people are probably wondering, raw or cooked animal products. You see a lot of this raw meat eating propaganda on, Instagram, TikTok, social medias in general. So what is better? So I'm going to tell you right now, raw is superior. It has amazing hydration, more nutrients, and no cancer-causing compounds. So raw is going to have so much water because when you cook food, you cook out the water. That water is going to carry all of that water-soluble nutrition, and that water is complete water. So that's going to be really good for the mitochondria. It's going to be extremely hydrating. And also cooking produces cancer-causing compounds like HCAs, so not eating that is going to be extremely beneficial. But I wouldn't worry too much about the cancer-causing compounds. They're not too much of a big deal. This is just less strain for your body, so eating raw is better. So here is a tier list of the foods you need to prioritize eating raw. Number 1 is milk. Milk is an extremely delicate food. It has lactoferrin that's reduced by cooking. Things like vitamin C also extremely reduced by cooking. So milk is the most important thing to get raw. Next up, we get organs. Organs are the next important thing to get raw. They're also very fragile. I always eat my liver and marrow raw. It's just better. It honestly tastes better raw too. So yeah, organs I would highly recommend eating raw. Next is egg yolks. You can cook the egg whites and that's perfectly fine because egg whites basically don't have any nutrition. And egg whites also have anti-nutrients, so I do recommend cooking the egg whites. But the egg yolks, I highly recommend leaving them raw. They're going to have so much nutrition that you want, like B vitamins, which are extremely heat sensitive. And I also forgot to mention the organs also have the B vitamins. So anything with a lot of B vitamins, you want to be leaving raw. So organs and egg yolks, raw of course. And then shellfish is also good to eat raw because they're also more delicate. Oysters, you always want to be eating oysters raw. What kind of crazy dude eats oysters cooked? In all the restaurants it's served raw. So just eat the oysters raw, alright? And then 5 is muscle meat. Muscle meat is not as much as important as the others for eating raw, but raw muscle meat is better than cooked muscle meat. So it definitely is worth eating raw. So is eating that raw primal diet extremely important? No. There are a lot of better things to focus on. The ideal ratio that I would say though, 90% plus of your animal foods raw. And the 10% cooked foods being gelatinous cusps that are tough to chew. Things like chuck roast, tail. They have a lot of collagen and realistically it's just not efficient to eat them raw. And guys, for raw foods, you do not want to be eating raw vegetables. I am strictly talking about animal products. Vegetables have a lot of anti-nutrients that you need to neutralize by cooking. Animal foods, okay to eat raw, very beneficial. Vegetables, stay away from them raw. Alright, next up we have the rest of the diet. So plants and other carbohydrates. This should be 30% or less of the diet. The main part of the diet should be the animal foods we discussed. This is where you'll get all of your carbohydrates. And guys, you need to see this as supplemental nutrition. The real nutrients come from the animal foods. These are supplemental. So what plants and carbs should you eat? So there are 2 types of plants and carbs that you should eat. They are starches and fruit. You should stay away from non-starchy vegetables for the most part. This is because there's no real point to eating them. You should focus on starches because they have the most carbohydrates, the most energy. So at least you're filtering out those anti-nutrients for a reason. I'll talk first about fruits. So fruits, you should only eat them during the summer. You should avoid fruits during the winter actually. And local fruits are king. Supermarket fruits are okay as long as it kind of makes sense within your environment. Like if only berries grow where you are and you order a big sweet watermelon, that's not the best idea. So you need to keep kind of the local fruit vibe when you're eating that. You should focus on fruits that are full of water and hydration. So things like watermelon, berries, pineapple, papaya, strawberries, grapes. All of these things have so much hydration, and you want to focus on them over fruits like bananas that don't have that much hydration. So for starch, you can also eat starch during the summer, but you should focus on fruits. Ideally, you should only eat fruits during the summer and no starch, and then switch to starch during the winter if you need to. Alright, now honey. Honey is high in fructose. It's a similar carb to fruit. You should only eat it in months where the bees are producing in your environment. So summer, so spring. So basically, when you can eat fruit, then you can probably eat honey. And when you can't eat fruit, then you probably can't eat honey. And the honey should be, guys, this is super important, raw local honey. If the honey is not raw, it's complete trash. Throw it out. It needs to be raw. And now for starches. Starches, you focus on them during the winter. During the summer, you can get all of your carbs from fruit. You do not need starch. But during the winter, you can switch to starches because they have glucose and not fructose. Fructose is like a summer signal to your body, and glucose is not as much. So you want to be focusing on that. Out of the starches, you need to prioritize starchy tubers. Things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, yucca. Basically the roots of the plant. Preparation is key when it comes to starches. So you do not want to be under preparing these because they have some anti-nutrients. For these starches that I mentioned, you want to be boiling them. This is the best method of preparation. It removes most of the anti-nutrients and the toxic plant compounds. So you're going to be getting that pure carbohydrate goodness. Always eats without the skin. You've probably seen people recommending to eat potatoes with the skin for the insoluble fiber, but guys, do not do that. Take out the skin. It removes the anti-nutrients, the glycoalkaloids. You do not want to have the skin on these things. So other forms of starches include grains and seeds, things like bread, rice, pasta, and oats. You don't want to have these as much as these because the seeds are the most protected part of the plant. So it's much better to eat the roots instead of eating these things. If you do eat them, make sure they are prepared extremely well to lower the bad plant compounds. Bread. If you're going to eat bread, it has to be sourdough. If not, throw it out. Sourdough reduces the phytic acid and a bunch of other things, so it has to be sourdough. For rice, it needs to be soaked for 24 hours and thoroughly washed before cooking. This reduces the phytic acid and also removes the arsenic. Also, you should only have white rice and not brown rice. And then for oats, just like rice, it should be soaked for 24 hours before consuming. This is the most important part. Most plants you can consume need to be organic. This is how you should decide what is the best for you. Let's say it's winter, you need some starches. You can't find organic potatoes, but you know that potatoes are better than oats. If you can find organic oats, it's better to go for the oats. Go for what's most organic. Go for what's most local. Always consume organic, guys. I stress this so much. The main pesticide, glyphosate, is absolutely wrecking your health. You need to be consuming organic. There are some exceptions like watermelon and other hard-shelled plants, but for the most part, the plants have to be organic. Alright, so for the fats that you can cook in and eat. So the number one fats that you want is animal fats. Things like tallow, butter, ghee. You've heard all your life that these things are bad for you, but let me tell you, our ancestors were eating these fats. These are the fats that we evolved to be eating, so you want to focus on the saturated fat. You can also do fruit fats if you want, things like avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil, but they are and always will be inferior to these fats. You do not want to be eating the seed oils, shouldn't even have to say that, but fruit fats and animal fats are okay. Okay, now, foods to avoid. Ultra-processed foods. Everyone knows McDonald's, cheeseburgers, seed oils, those shits are bad for us. But one thing that people don't really know is these protein bars are absolute poison. All the protein products like this one, they're ultra-processed, they're extremely bad, and you want to be staying away from them. So you want to be staying away from protein bars, most protein powders, things like pre-workouts, seed oils. If it's ultra processed, do not eat it. Our ancestors were eating natural foods. That's what we evolved to be doing. Ultra processed foods are a new thing. You should not eat them. And you should also avoid non-organic vegetables because they're sprayed in artificial pesticides. And you should avoid leafy greens. Leafy greens offer a lot of drawbacks and little benefits. So avoid leafy greens. They have a bunch of oxalates, a bunch of plant chemicals. It's just really not worth eating them. If you do eat them, make sure they are thoroughly cooked. But guys, you should not be having leafy greens in the big 25. One thing you should also avoid is seeds and other seed products, things like coffee, dark chocolate, and chia seeds. I know there is some benefits to dark chocolate, but on this diet, guys, you're going to be getting everything that you need. You do not need to be eating more seeds. You should especially avoid seeds and greens if they're raw. It has to be cooked, guys, because these plants have so many anti-nutrients. Alright, now, one thing that not a lot of people talk about, fermented foods. You need probiotics in your diet. Our ancestors were eating this in form of rotten meat. It sounds absolutely disgusting, but that is probiotics. You do not have to be eating rotten meats. I'm going to give you alternatives, but you need fermented foods in the diet to get that bacteria. Your microbiome is literally like an organ. It's heavily connected to your brain, and it's just as important as things like your liver, your skin, etc. The goat of fermented foods is raw kefir. So instead of eating, rotten animals, you can eat raw kefir. It's not bad tasting, it's just a little bit sour, and the way you can eat this is either by obviously buying it from a store or a farm, or you can make it your own. There are two ways to make raw kefir by yourself. First, you need to get your raw milk, and then you can either let the raw milk sit for like 5 days and it ferments into raw kefir, or you can use kefir grains to accelerate the process and then just ferment it with the kefir grains. You have your raw kefir. I highly recommend making kefir at home because usually these store-bought raw kefirs, they don't use the real kefir grains. The real kefir grains have a lot more probiotic. I highly recommend making kefir on your own, and it's a lot cheaper too. But some people are lactose intolerant and can't do raw kefir, so the next best thing is water kefir. You can look up how to make that. It's basically similar to milk kefir, but without the nutrients, of course. But some people can tolerate better. Other fermented foods include kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha. If you can't tolerate raw kefir, or if you can't find kefir, then you can have these. But raw kefir will always be the best food. Now, seasonal changes. No one talks about this. Your diet should change based on the seasons. You cannot eat the same for the whole year unless you live in a tropical environment. Our ancestors were changing their diet based on the seasons. Everyone knows about the circadian rhythm, but you also have a circadian rhythm based on the seasons. So your body changes throughout the seasons, and you should eat in a way that facilitates this process. So your diet should change based on the environment. If you're in a summer-like environment, the reason I say summer-like is because, even if it's the winter in the tropics, it's still summer, basically. So you get what I mean. If it's in, the summer-like conditions, then you should consume more fruits. But if it's in a winter-like conditions, you should consume little to no fruit. And if you need carbohydrates, then you can eat starch instead. The reason for this is because the fructose in the fruit is a summer signal. When you eat fruit, you're basically telling your body, it's summer, it's summer, it's summer, it's hot outside, I need to eat more, I need to gather, I need to prepare for the winter. So you really do not want to be eating fruits during the winter. It's not a super big deal, guys. If you eat a banana during the winter, it's not going to kill you. But for the most part, you want to lower your fruit consumption during the winter. How do you know if you need carbs during the winter? This is based on your activity level. If you do things like sprints, heavy lifting, sports, then you need carbs during the winter, guys. But the most ideal thing, though, is not having carbs during the winter. Even, these non-sugary carbs like potatoes, they still give you slight summer signals to your body. It's not nearly as heavy as fruit, but the thing is, with all the artificial light, with all this bullshit, you are getting summer signals. So having a hard winter signal, like eating 100% carnivore diet during the winter, that's going to tell your body, okay, this is winter, even with all of the bullshit artificial lights. So that is the most optimal. But if you're doing sports, like I would highly recommend doing sports, going to the gym, then your performance will increase if you eat carbs. So during the winter, only eat things like potatoes. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is how many carbs you eat on this diet highly depends on your activity levels. If you do more exercise, then you should eat more carbs, and if you do less exercise, then you should eat less carbs. Now I'm going to be going over some bonus foods. These are foods that don't really fit in the other categories, but they are worth including in your diet. The first one is avocado. This is a low-carb fruit, and it's more like a fat source. It's not really like any other fruit because it's so high in fat, so you should treat this as a fat and a mineral source. It's a great addition to your breakfast. I have this every single day. The next thing is rare bee products. Things like royal jelly, which is this thing right here. It boosts testosterone, it has antioxidants, and there are a ton of benefits associated to eating royal jelly. Another thing is bee pollen. This can really help with your allergies. It can give you antioxidants. So if you include these two things in your diet, then that will be amazing. Another thing is rare milk products. This includes colostrum. Colostrum is the first milk the cow gives, and it's essentially raw milk on steroids. This thing is so nutrient dense. If you can eat this, then you're extremely lucky. This is extremely hard to find, extremely expensive, but it is an absolute superfood. This is one of the most nutrient-dense foods. If you eat this during puberty, you're gonna grow to like 6'5". Alright, and this is a bit of a weird one. Blood. It looks kind of disgusting, I know, but blood is elite hydration. I personally don't drink blood, but I've seen some people include it in their diet and have great benefits because of all of that hydration. And I would advise be careful with the iron overload if you're eating blood because it has so much iron. So I wouldn't highly recommend this food, but if you do include it, it can give some benefits. So that's the full guide to the ancestral diet. This is definitely one of the most important videos that I made. If you have any questions regarding this diet or anything that I forgot to cover, ask down below in the comments. I'll answer all of your questions. If you've been trying to get healthy but don't know where to start, then I highly recommend you book my one-to-one coaching. I can help you one-on-one transform your diet to the ancestral diet, give you my pro tips, my personal experience, and help you level up your diet one-to-one. So if that's something you'd be interested in, I have that linked in my bio. Hopefully you can take away something from this video to help you become healthier. That is my ultimate goal, to inspire people to be healthier. So if you want to see more health content on the ancestral diet, ancestral lifestyle, make sure to subscribe. See you guys.